Previously on Sailing Miss Lone Star, you came along as we finished up our last projects on Little Miss, on the remote island of Cuttyhunk. This week on Sailing Miss Lone Star, we run into a little bit of trouble. The wind picks up over 50 knots.
How long is it supposed to blow like this?
8 hours.
You know, as a man, I have to check my ego because I so do not want to film this.
Hey, what you're about to see is probably the worst day that I've personally ever had sailing.
It was one of the worst days that I've ever encountered because I was so out of ideas and options to do. And as you guys have followed us along the world and over the world, you've seen us sail on some pretty neat boats, tough weather conditions, Cape Town, Europe. This was tough.
This was tough, and we've encountered weather like this before, but not in such a small boat without an engine. One more really important thing before we get to this episode is we want to thank our latest and greatest new unicorn here. Thank you so much, Kevin. You're amazing. You're our unicorn.
As stated in the unicorn tier, that Aubrey will smooch a unicorn and I will drink a shot of whiskey for you, Kevin. Thank you so much. Here goes.
We love you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of our supporters. We
all
love
our patrons.
You make all of this possible. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy this episode, and we can't wait to see you in Costa Rica.
Yoo-hoo!
So we've got, what do you say, 40 knots? It says
This is excess of 40 knots.
yeah, this could be 50 plus. On windy, it says that it's 20 knots right now. I thought that we were screwed because I didn't know there was more fenders. There's a hole in the boat. The side of the boat was crushed, so the gunnel has a huge crack in it. If we get heavy seas, we're going to take on water. So hopefully the weather will die down tomorrow and I can try to fiberglass it. It's not going to be pretty. I'll have to find a grinder. This is the worst wind I have ever been in. I just don't know if we're gonna, how we're gonna sail it out of here with a hole in the front. How long is it supposed to blow like this?
8 hours.
Do you think we're safe?
I don't know.
All right, we're getting off the boat. If we lose her, if we lose a cleat, there's nothing we can do to save it right now.
It's too dangerous to be on this boat.
So we've got a hole in the deck, and if the cleats don't hold, then we're not gonna make it. We won't live through trying to get off this boat, so.
It's like 1 a.m. right now. We've tried everything. We've done 6-7 different fenders. The boat is just being pushed onto this dock.
It's just being flexed, it's cracked.
It's cracking on the port side. It's just 50 knots of wind just pushing it on the dock as hard as possible. It's breaking everything. Like Aubrey says, if this forward cleat comes loose, this boat will be back there in a matter of 4 or 5 seconds. It is not at this point safe for us to be on this boat.
So we had some tough choices to make. Number one, leave the boat on the dock as the wind picked up. Try to go out with our unreliable outboard to a mooring ball. And all of the moorings had been picked up, so it was also difficult to find, which would then leave us anchoring in 50 some odd knots of wind with no dinghy. I've spoke of this many times. We call the weatherman the weather guesser, and you should always double the swell and almost double the wind.
We gotta get that fender in there again. Where did that big fender go? Is it gone? Sure. There it is.
There's a hole there.
I know. I think we should leave her running lights on in case she breaks loose.
That's why. So sad. So sad.
Let's make sure the lines, do you look at the lines at all? Let's make sure they're not chafing. There's not really a lot of pressure on the lines anyway. Alright. Okay, well, we're walking up to a friend's house. They're not home. We're gonna see if we can get in and sleep there. It just isn't safe on the boat tonight. I'm pretty upset about it. There's a decent sized hole in the deck from it flexing. But if we lose a cleat, then
there's a really good chance of us losing our lives. And at this point you have to decide, are you going to act in your own life or are you going to stay with the boat? And we stayed with the boat for the last 6 hours. It's like 1 AM right now. And we've done everything that we can. We've loosened lines, we've added big fenders, moved the fenders, adjusted the lines, tried everything that we can to secure the boat and to make sure everybody can be safe. But at this point it's just not safe on the boat anymore, and we unfortunately have to get off right now. If that boat swings around,
there's nothing
it's
we
disaster.
can do.
If a cleat comes off, either on the dock or on the boat, and the wind has just picked up about 45 to 50 knots. It's almost like a hurricane. The diesel cans on deck are full with fuel. They're being moved around. That's 30 kilograms. The lobster pods on shore are being moved around by the wind. So this is unfortunate.
What happened here is weather conditions that had come from, we think, what was the remains of a hurricane or a tropical storm that had just built up and just came over the land and just horribly destroyed. There's a short interview at the end with some of the locals that will say and tell you that this has been the worst storm that they've had in a very long time.
For us, we have a crack in the gunnel, which at the time seemed like a huge gash in the deck, and after some more inspection and speaking to some professionals, it's fiberglass work, which I actually enjoy doing, and I'm going to do myself.
How do you feel about that job?
It's a feeling having to tape your boat together. I always make jokes about duct tape, but this isn't one of them.
No.
So the duct tape is just to make sure that the water doesn't come in through the gash in the deck and get the beds and the clothes and all of our belongings wet. We're gonna be towed back on
2 days from now.
yeah, 2 days from now. So the wind just keeps picking up and not wanting to let up or let anybody off the island or anybody to the island. So there's about 11 people right now on island, residents. And thankfully we have enough food. We're out of wine. It's a very sad day for Little Miss. We are being towed back to the port from which we came.
So, there's not one thing on this small little boat that we have not done. Aubrey's gonna fix this boat up. In fact, we're busy with that right now. And what you're gonna see in the next 2 episodes is us in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Find out how we end up in Costa Rica and why. And then we're back at the boat sailing her to the Bahamas. She's safe in Florida. Everything's hunky-dory, and this little one has fixed the other little one.
What's the setup you have right there?
So this is a bridle that's gonna tow us astern, and then this is for the red lines for the hip tow out of the channel. So we actually had some more damage as another windstorm picked up. So the gunnels are cracked a little bit deeper. The paint's still fine, go figure, but yeah, this is a lot of fiberglass work, which I don't know if I can do.
So before every journey we make sure that we have everything in place, and luckily we did have Towboat US in place. We did also speak to our insurance company, which is Geico Marine, and we'll tell you exactly what happened there. I would not recommend you to use Geico Marine ever. Tell me what you're feeling right now.
Defeated. Defeated, and also driven to get her back out there and start sailing again. The damage is pretty bad, like pretty bad.
exciting. The gunnel, which you'll see in the coming episodes, was a point of weakness for the boat anyway. So now that we're repairing her, she's gonna be really, really strong. And I'm very, very excited to just increase the structural integrity of that little pink boat so we can take her even farther.
You know, as a man, I have to check my ego because I so do not want to film this. It's really tough for me to have to show this. But, you know, your ego is not going to get you anywhere. I need to be humble and I need to accept the lesson.
You feel it?
Am I feeling? I'm feeling like I'm having to come up with something positive about this situation right now. The only thing I can think about is that it's amazing that we don't have to use the autopilot on tow, so luckily we're saving some batteries. Second of all, I don't need to steer. That's positive.
I get to brush up on my fiberglass skills.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna learn some more tricks of the trade because we have to fix this boat ourselves. So the learning curve is so steep with sailboats. I mean, we've learned so much over the last 3 years, and we've sailed so many different boats, and every time something like this happens, I'm just first of all sad, and then grateful and humble with the opportunity to learn more. So I feel like after this, we have done every single living possible thing on a sailboat, from the bow to the stern, and done every single project except build a boat. What's a positive thing you can take out of this?
Well, we put a lot of time and money and effort into this boat, and blood, sweat, and tears, and whenever I feel like I'm at the bottom, it's sometimes the most beautiful place, because as you look up, you know that there's no deeper to fall. And this boat's going back on the hard so that she can be fixed, and we have to wait for it to warm up or ship her south to be able to do the fiberglass work at all.
We're not allowed to do fiberglass in this cold.
So
right.
you can't do, fiberglass isn't going to work for you when you're sitting at 40 degrees Fahrenheit. It just, it won't dry. You can't do it. So we'll have to ship her south, or we'll have to wait until the winter's over. And the latter really doesn't sit very well in my heart after we have worked so hard and come so far to have to just wait and let her sit in the cold and the snow. So
stick around to the end and see what lessons we learned and what we would do different next time.
So we're having the boat trucked down to Florida because we live on it and we really don't have another choice. And while we're down there, we're going to do some repairs with Sailing Uma, so that's very exciting. And we're just going to show you today what we're going to do. So right now, I had a long life milk break its package in here. So you can see it's all broken in here. So I'm just cleaning this out. Okay, I've got this stuff called Wet It and Forget It. And it was recommended to me by an older gal that also sails. And she says that she hoses her boat down with this in the winter time, and then she has no mold or mildew. So she says she just sprays it all over, and it keeps the spores from growing. All right.
This, my friend, is the best invention ever. Before you leave your boat, get yourself some of these plastic bags with a pump like this, get all the air out. You will not.
Everything's fresh and like new.
So fresh and so clean.
So it's the day after the storm, people, and it's been a really sad few hours for us. And we're with Bo and Judith right now. They took us in.
They adopted us.
They adopted us. You guys saw the clip of us walking off the boat 3 a.m. in the morning, so we came to their house. But what the heck was going on with this weather in Karihan?
It was horrible. It was very, very unusual for this time of year. That much wind
Continuous.
for that many days.
Yeah.
So you've been coming for 50 years.
56.
Wow.
But 12 years ago we retired, and we are on island 10 months out of the year. So we're here till December. So we see the weather we know what's normal and what's usual. And high winds in the winter time, in the depth of winter, January, February, is routine. Every once in a while there'll be like a storm.
You expect
that
it to be like that?
Yes.
Why does everybody predict 12 to 15 knots below what happened?
It's
Is
hard
it
to
always
say.
like that here?
No,
It's
no,
hard
no.
to say,
So
No.
the wind is pretty predictable by what the forecaster will say usually, because it called for.
It's very unusual when they cancel the ferries to Martha's Vineyard and they cancel the ferries to Nantucket.
And that's what happened this storm.
Yes, and the boy that usually runs a water taxi every day from here, he said, there's no way. And people who were going to leave said, this is insane, this is crazy. We're not, some people say it gusted over 50. I don't know where you got
We got 47.
When we disembarked, it was 47 off of our wind indicator.
There was a prediction. They did say high winds.
Yes, we saw that.
Sailors warning.
Yes.
So a person is very smart to come into our harbor. Many people usually shelter here.
And that's why we thought we'd do that.
which happens a
Yes,
lot.
that happens a lot with the people going south for the winter. Much safer than a lot of other places because it's all
And that's
contained.
why we came here, yeah.
Who knew? So what you did to come in makes perfect sense. You can't sail in it, so you're in a safe harbor and you just wait it out.
Like, there's no
No.
moving the boat. We were even afraid to loosen the lines because
No,
If it-
no, you would have been crashed
Yeah.
all over the place.
Yeah. The power boat next to us that was sheltered on the other side, they said they were tossed around. I'm talking a 50-ton boat. They said they were tossed around inside the boat.
I saw Cheryl the day after, and the first thing she said to me, she said, "How did you guys do last night?" I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "The wind." I said, "Oh, we both woke up." Immediately, we both woke up, and Bill said, "Do you hear that? Roaring, like a train."
Yeah, it was like a horror movie in that boat. I was scared.
Yeah.
I thought of that movie called Adrift. There's this new movie out with this.
Please don't watch it. If you're a
people
sailor,
go into-
don't watch it.
People go into a hurricane and they get tumbled around.
Oh, God.
And I was like, you know what? If this is what it must have sounded like just before that happened. Luckily, we're on the dock. But thank you guys so much for taking us in and for giving us some
You're welcome.
information. And
Yes, and
really
keeping
nice.
us warm and feeding us and telling us stories and making us laugh.
So this is the lessons learned section. If you've enjoyed this episode and you do not feel like watching this, click to the next one or stay tuned and we're going to tell you exactly what we think we could have done different, what we've learned from this situation and how you can learn from it too.
Yes, I think number one, I would not push the weather window the way that we did ever again. We got really close into fall, and in the past, in history, many people have been able to sail south perfectly safe, but this year the weather just wasn't what it had been in the previous years.
The Cuttyhunk ferry had been cancelled. Some people had trucked their boats south. People were telling us that this is the worst fishing that they've had in a long time. Tuna didn't come out this year, so the weather was a little bit funky. Now, in my heart, I didn't want to really sail down south. Lots of people said don't go, but as a salty sailor, we just said we have to push down south. So Bianca was sent to grandma and we decided let's go.
Let's make a push for it. I'm not built for the cold.
Yeah, lesson number one, don't push the weather window. Technically, like Aubrey said, we weren't late, but the weather was looking funky. Aubrey always says when the bird starts flying away, there's a tsunami coming. So check your weather and watch the animals in the environment. Lesson number one. Lesson number two is the way that we docked the boat. So coming into Cuttyhunk, there's a small little bay and the wind was coming from our bow. As you know, usually you anchor with your bow into the wind and you fall back. This is what we did, mooring onto the side of the dock. The wind was coming from the bow. We did not check the weather direction every 4 to 5 hours. Maybe every hour we should, because the weather was acting up funky. What had happened was the weather had changed from the bow to the starboard side. It was gusting upwards of 50 knots of wind, which meant that following seas was pushing the boat from the starboard side into the port side, into the jetty. So wind plus following sea plus that force just created, you know, such a bad environment for Little Miss to be. And the other thing I can tell you, my friend, is that if you think that you have a fender, doesn't matter how big they were, our fenders were this big.
We borrowed them. We borrowed them without asking from the harbor master because nobody was out in this weather. And they basically turned into concrete. Once they compress, they're just as hard as that dock.
Yeah.
And it did save the paint, which I was really thankful for, but there were already weak spots in the gunnel. And if you have fiberglass gunnels like Little Miss,
Which brings us to point number 4. Right?
Is that 3 or 4? Nevertheless.
After that shot I took in the beginning of the episode, I don't know anymore.
Nevertheless, you can check the integrity of some of your fiberglass by looking at the deep grooves or
Hairline cracks.
Hairline cracks that are in the gel coat. And Little Miss already had a lot of really deep cracks in the gel coat, so it was already a compromised place. It was probably the weakest part of the boat, so it's to be expected with that type of flex and pressure on the side of the boat for that to crack. So it's not the best design that I've seen on the Cal, and we have really gone through it, you know, fine tooth and comb, tooth and nail.
Tooth and what?
Something with your tooth. We've gone through every little piece of it, and this has been probably the least sturdy part of the boat.
Yes.
So now what we're gonna do is something really interesting. We're gonna stuff that empty space with foam, and then we're gonna make a straight piece of fiberglass there, which is gonna be very, very, very strong. So if there's any pressure on the side of the boat, that will protect the gunnels, which will then
absorb it, yeah.
Protect the chain plates, which is the whole structural integrity of the rig.
So that was another lesson learned, and the last lesson learned was to check if you have insurance or if you have Towboat US the day before you leave. The day before we left, we did phone our insurance and we did check up with Towboat US that everything was in place. We have a checklist on board before we take long passages and before we sail that we go through. That's one of the checks on the checklist. You can also find our checklist on Vimeo, which we can put there. You can go and check that out, and that's what we did. Aubrey phoned Geico.
No question is ever too stupid. He always asks these questions that are like, so if I sail out and the motor is on, am I covered? If I sail out and the motor is off, am I covered? And I'm like,
ask the most stupid questions.
Shut up,
ask everything.
Let's go. And I really learned a valuable lesson from him and why it's so important to ask all of those seemingly stupid questions, because they don't want to pay you.
Never. So we had a really tough time with Geico US. We probably will not stay with Geico, but make sure that everything is correct and make sure that you know what port insured means.
Yes, port insured. I did not know that was a thing, but it's a thing. And port insured means that you are only insured in port. So I guess that's fine if you have your boat in the yard and you don't plan on leaving.
Sometimes they will insure you and they will tell you when you bump your boat or something happens that you're only port insured, and if you say, but I didn't know, they say you did not ask. So make sure about that and enjoy your sailing out there. We are happy to show you what we do wrong and right, and we all learn from it.
Yeah, so thank you very much for coming along. I'm sure there's gonna be lots of comments of what else we could have done better at the bottom. If anybody has 17 miles of spring line, we can use it.
Yeah, because then we could take it all the way to the other side of the island. And
that's right.
Onto a car or a house or something.
Exactly.
Right. So yes, as you guys know, sailing is always very interesting. We've sailed many boats. We've delivered big boats. The last boat you guys saw us being in such a big storm was the Hansa 588, which is a 58-foot boat in the Caribbean. No.
Sardinia.
In Sardinia, I'm sorry. And we had almost the same situation, but we could put some spring lines from the port side to the dock, which we had a block and tackle. Go check that episode. That's on the Europe episode on Vimeo as well as on YouTube. So from us here at Sailing with Lone Star, we keep learning, we keep sharing, we keep having fun, and maybe next week we'll have another one of these.
I'm on the wagon, so I'm just gonna keep kissing this.
Well, I'm not on the wagon. Mwah! Cheers, guys.
Bye.
No comida. ¿Por qué?
Vamos a traer dientes.
¿Cómo?
Vamos a traer.
Wow, that chicken smells fantastic. This option is free and it's a little bit more wild. So we found a secluded spot where we can do a little skinny dip. awesome. This is definitely a must-see here.
Definitely an adventure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week in Costa Rica. Don't forget to say hello in the comments below.